The Goblin of Adachigahara. Long, long ago, there was a large plain called Adachigahara in the province of Mutsu in Japan. This place was said to be haunted by a cannibal goblin who took the form of an old woman. From time to time, many travelers disappeared and were never heard of again, and the old woman round the charcoal braziers in the evenings, and the girls washing the household rice at the wells in the morning, whispered dreadful stories of how the missing folk had been lured to the goblin's cottage and devoured. For the goblin lived only on human flesh. Of course, no one dared to venture near the haunted spot after sunset, and all those who could avoided it in the daytime. As for the travelers, they were all warned of this dreadful place. There was one day, as the sun was setting, that a priest came to the plain. He was a belated traveler, and his robe showed that he was a Buddhist pilgrim walking from shrine to shrine to pray for some blessing or to crave for forgiveness of his sins. He had apparently lost his way, and as it was late he met no one who could show him the road or warn him. Now he had walked the whole day now. Of course he was tired and hungry, and the evenings, they were chilly, for it was as late in autumn, and he began to be very anxious to find some house where he could obtain a night's lodging. But he found himself lost in the midst of the large plain, and looked about him in vain for some sign of human habitation. But at last, after wandering about for some hours, he saw a clump of trees in the distance, and through the trees he caught sight of the glimmer of a single ray of light. He exclaimed with joy, "Oh, surely that is some cottage where I can get a night's lodging." Keeping the light before his eyes, he dragged his weary, aching feet as quickly as he could towards the spot, and soon he came to a rather miserable-looking little cottage. As he drew near, he saw that it was in a tumble-down condition. The bamboo fence was broken, and weeds and grass pushed their way through the gaps. The paper screens which serve as windows and doors in Japan were full of holes, and the posts of the house were bent with age. It seemed scarcely able to support that old thatched roof. But the hut was open, and by the light of an old lantern, an old woman sat spinning and weaving industriously. The pilgrim called to her across the bamboo fence and said, "Old woman, good evening. I'm a traveler. Please excuse me, but I've lost my way and, well, I don't know what to do, for I have nowhere to rest for the night. I beg you, please be good enough to let me spend the night under your roof." Well, as soon as she heard herself spoken to, the old woman stopped spinning, rose from her seat, and approached the priest. "I am very sorry for you. You must indeed be distressed to have lost your way in such a lonely spot, and so late at night. Unfortunately, I cannot put you up, for I have no bed to offer you, and no accommodation whatsoever for a guest. No, not in this poor place." "Oh, But it does not matter, said the priest. All I want is a shelter under some roof for the night. And if you'll be good enough just to let me lie on the kitchen floor, oh, I'd be so grateful. You see, I'm too tired to walk any further tonight. So, I really hope that you'll not refuse me. Otherwise, I'll have to sleep out on that cold plain. And in this way, he pressed the old woman to let him stay. She seemed very reluctant, but at last she said, Very well then, I'll let you stay here. I can offer you a very poor welcome only, but come in now, and I'll make a fire. For the night is indeed cold. The pilgrim was only too glad to do as he was told. He took off his sandals and entered the hut. The old woman then brought some sticks of wood and lit the fire, and bade her guest draw near and warm himself. You must be hungry after your long journey, said the old woman. I'll go and cook some supper for you. She then went to the kitchen and began to cook some rice. After the priest had finished his supper, the old woman sat down by the fireplace, and they talked together for a long time. The pilgrim thought to himself that he had been very lucky to come across such a kind and hospitable old lady. At last, the wood gave out, and as the fire died slowly down, he began to shiver with cold, just as he had done when he arrived. I see you are cold, said the old woman. I will go out and gather some wood, for we've used it all now. You must stay and take care of the house while I'm gone. Oh, no, said the pilgrim. Let me go instead. Well, you see, you are old, and, well, I can't think of letting you go out on your own to get wood for me in this cold night. But the old woman shook her head and said to him, No, indeed, you must stay quietly here, for you are my guest. And then, with a smile, she left him and went out. But in a moment she came back and she said, You must sit where you are and not move. And whatever happens, do not go near or look into the inner room. Now mind what I tell you. If you tell me not to go near that room, of course I won't, said the priest, but rather bewildered at the comment. So the old woman went out again, and the priest was left all alone. The fire had dried out, and only the light in the hut was that of the dim lantern. For the first time in that night he began to feel that he was in kind of a weird place, and the old woman's words, Whatever you do, don't peep into that back room, aroused his curiosity and fear. What hidden thing could be in that room that she did not want him to see? For some time the remembrance of his promise to the old woman kept him still, but at last he could no longer resist his curiosity to peep into that forbidden place. He got up and began to move slowly towards the forbidden room. Then the thought that the old woman would be very angry with him if he disobeyed her made him come back to his place by the fireside. As the minutes went slowly by, the old woman did not return. He began to feel more and more frightened, and to wonder what dreadful secret was in that room behind him. He must find out. She will not know that I've looked, unless I tell her, surely. I'll just have a little peep before she comes back," said the man to himself. And with these words he got up on his feet, for he'd been sitting all this time in Japanese fashion with his feet underneath him, and stealthily crept towards that forbidden spot. With trembling hands, he pushed back the sliding door and looked in. But what he saw froze the blood in his veins. The room was full of dead men's bones, and the walls were splashed and the floor was covered with blood. In one corner, skull upon skull rose to the ceiling, and in another was a heap of arm bones, and another a heap of leg bones. The sickening smell made him faint, and he fell backwards with horror, and for some time lay in a heap with a fright on the floor, a pitiful sight. He trembled all over, and his teeth chattered, and he could hardly crawl away from that dreadful spot. He cried out, "How horrible! What awful den have I come to in my travels? May Buddha help me, or I am lost. Is it possible that the kind old woman is really the cannibal goblin? When she comes back she will show herself in her true character. Oh, preserve me, she'll eat me up in a single mouthful." With these words his strength came back to him, and snatching up his hat and staff, he rushed out of the house as fast as his legs could carry him. Out into the night he ran, his one thought to get as far away as he could from the goblin's haunt. He had not gone too far when he heard steps behind him, and a voice cried, "Stop! Stop!" He ran on, redoubling his speed, pretending not to hear. And as he ran he heard the steps behind him come nearer and nearer, and at last he recognized the old woman's voice, which grew louder as she came nearer. "Stop, you wicked man! Why did you look into the forbidden room?" The priest quite forgot how tired he was, and his feet flew over the ground faster than they ever did before, faster than he thought possible, for the fear gave him strength, for he knew that if the goblin caught up to him, he would soon be one of her victims. With all his heart he repeated the prayer to Buddha, and after him rushed the dreadful old hag, her hair flying in the wind, and her face changing with rage into that demon that she really was. In her hand she carried a large, blood-stained knife, and she still shrieked after him, "Stop! Stop!" At last, when the priest felt he could run no more, the dawn broke, and with the darkness of night the goblin vanished, and he was safe. The priest now knew that he had met the Goblin of Adachigahara, the story of whom he had often heard, but never believed to be true. He felt that he owed his wonderful escape to the protection of Buddha, to whom he had prayed for help, and so he took out his beads, and bowing his head as the sun rose, said his prayers and made his thanks earnestly. He then set forward for another part of the country, only too glad to leave the haunted plain behind him. The Sagacious Monkey and the Boar. Long, long ago, there lived in the province of Shinshin in Japan a traveling monkey man who earned his living by taking round a monkey and showing off the animal's tricks. One evening, the man came home in a very bad temper, and told his wife to the very next morning send for the butcher. The wife was, of course, quite bewildered, and asked her husband, "Why do you wish me to send for the butcher?" The man answered, "It's no use taking that monkey around any longer. He's too old and forgets his tricks. I beat him with my stick, all I know, but he won't dance properly. I must now sell him to the butcher and make what money I can out of him. There's nothing else to be done." The woman felt sorry for the poor animal and pleaded for her husband to spare the monkey, but the pleading was all in vain. The man was determined to sell him off, no matter how gruesome the outcome would be. Now the monkey, he was in the next room, and of course overheard every word of the conversation. He soon understood that he was going to be killed, and he said to himself, "Barbarous, barbarous indeed, barbarous indeed is my master. Here I have served him faithfully for years, and instead of allowing me to end my days comfortably and in peace, he's going to let me be cut up by the butcher, and my poor body is to be roasted, stewed, and eaten. Ah, woe is me. What am I to do? Wait. Now that is a bright thought that just struck me. There is, I know, a wild boar living in the forests nearby. I have often heard of his wisdom. Well, perhaps if I go and tell him the strait that I am in, he will give me his advice. I suppose there's no harm in trying." There was no time to lose. The monkey slipped out of the house and ran as quickly as he could to the forest to find the boar. The boar, of course, was at home, just his luck, and the monkey began to tell his tale of woe all at once. "Good Mr. Boar, I have heard of your excellent wisdom. Everybody has heard of it. But I am in great trouble. You alone can help me. You see, I've grown old in the service of my master, and because I cannot dance properly, now he intends to sell me off to the butcher. What do you advise that I do? You must know something. I know how clever you are. Oh, what should I do?" As for the boar, he was quite pleased with all the flattery, and, well, quite determined, too, to help the monkey. He sat there and thought for a little while, and after a brief silence, he said, "Doesn't your master have a little baby?" "Oh, yes," said the monkey. "He actually has an infant son." "Doesn't it lie by the door in the morning when your mistress begins the work of the day?" "Well, I will come around early, and when I see the opportunity, I will seize the little thing and run off with it." The monkey nodded its head, listening intently. "Okay, well, what happens then?" said the monkey. "Why, the mother will be in a tremendous scare, of course, you must imagine, and before your master and mistress know what to do, you must run after me and rescue the child, take it home safely to its parents, and you will see that when the butcher comes, they won't have the heart to sell you, surely." The monkey thanked the boar many, many times, and then went home. But he did not sleep much that night, as one may imagine, for thinking of the morning. In fact, his life depended on whether the boar's plan succeeded or not. He was, of course, the first up before the dawn, waiting anxiously for what was to happen. It seemed to him a very long time before his master's wife began to move about and open the shutters to let in the light of day. Then all happened exactly as the boar had planned. The mother placed her child near the porch as usual, while she tidied up the house and got her breakfast ready. The child was crooning happily in the morning sunlight, dabbling on the mats at the play of light and shadow. Suddenly, there was a noise in the porch and a loud cry from the poor little child. The mother ran out from the kitchen to the spot, only just in time to see the boar disappearing through the gate with her child in its clutch. She flung out her hands with a loud cry of despair and rushed into the inner room where her husband was still sleeping soundly. He sat up slowly, confused, and rubbed his eyes, and crossly demanded what his wife was making all the damn noise about. By the time that the man was alive to what had happened, and they both got outside the gate, the boar had got well away. But what they did see was the old monkey running after the thief as hard as his legs could carry him with all his strength. Both the man and wife were moved to admiration at the conduct of the sagacious monkey, and their gratitude knew no bounds when indeed the faithful monkey brought back the child safely to their arms. "There," said the wife, "this is the animal you want to kill? If the monkey hadn't have been there, we should have lost our child forever." The man nodded his head and said in shame, "You are right, my wife. You are right. You may send the butcher immediately back when he comes. And now, give us all a good breakfast, will you? Oh, and make sure there's something extra special for the monkey." When the butcher arrived, he was explained the situation and sent away with an order for some boar's meat for the evening dinner, and the monkey was petted and lived the rest of his days in peace, nor did his master ever strike him again. The Happy Hunter and the Skillful Fisher. Long, long ago, Japan was governed by Hohodemi, the fourth Mikoto, in descent from the illustrious Amaterasu, the sun goddess. He was not only as handsome as his ancestress was beautiful, but he was also very strong and brave, and was famous for being the greatest hunter in the land. Because of his matchless skill as a hunter, he was called Yama Sachihiko, or the Happy Hunter of the Mountains. His elder brother was also a very skillful fisher, and as he far surpassed all rivals in fishing, he was named Umi Sachihiko, or the Skillful Fisher of the Sea. The brothers thus led very happy and carefree lives, thoroughly enjoying their respective occupations, and the days passed quickly and pleasantly while each pursued his own way, the one hunting and the other fishing. One day, the happy hunter came to his brother, the skillful fisher, and said these words to him. "Well, my brother, I see you go to the sea every day with your fishing rod in hand, and when you return, you come laden with fish. And as for me, it is my pleasure to take my bow and arrow and to hunt wild animals up the mountains and down in the valleys. For a long time we have followed our favorite occupation, so that now we must both be tired, you of your fishing, and I of my hunting. Don't you think it would be wise for us to make a change? Will you try hunting in the mountains, and perhaps I will go and fish in the sea?" The skillful fisher listened in silence to his brother, and for a moment was thoughtful, but at last he answered, Sure, why not? Your idea is not a bad one at all. Give me your bow and arrow, and I will set out at once for the mountains and hunt for game." "Oh, okay then. Let's do it." And so the matter was settled by this talk, and the two brothers each started out to try each other's respective professions, little dreaming of all that would happen. In fact, it was very unwise of them, for the happy hunter knew nothing of fishing, and the skillful fisher, who was, by the way, bad-tempered, knew as much about hunting. While the happy hunter took his brother's much-prized fishing hook and rod and went down to the seashore and sat down on the rocks. He baited his hook and then threw it into the sea clumsily. He sat and gazed at the little float, bobbing up and down in the water, and longed for a good fish to come by and finally be caught on its own volition. Every time the boy moved a little, he pulled up the rod, but there was never a fish at the end of it, only the hook and the bait. If he had known how to fish properly, you see, he would have been able to catch plenty of fish, but although he was the greatest hunter in the land, he could not help being the worst fisher. A whole day passed by just like that, while he sat on the rocks holding the fishing rod and waiting in vain for his luck to turn. And at last the day began to darken, and the evening came. Still he had caught not a single fish. Drawing up his line for the very last time before going home, he found that he had also lost his hook, without even knowing when he had dropped it. And he now began to feel extremely anxious, for he knew that his brother would be angry at his having lost his hook, for it being his only one he valued above all other things. The happy hunter now set to work to look among the rocks and on the sand for the lost hook, and while he was searching to and fro, his brother, the skillful fisher, arrived on the scene. He had failed to find any game while hunting that day, and was not only in a bad temper, but looked fearfully cross. When he saw the happy hunter searching about on the shore, he knew that something must have gone wrong, and so he said at once, "What are you doing, my brother?" The happy hunter went forward timidly, for he feared his brother's anger, and said, "Oh, my brother, I have indeed done poorly." "Well, what's the matter? What have you done?" asked the brother impatiently. "Well, I lost your precious fishing hook." While he was still speaking, his brother stopped him and cried out fiercely, "Lost my hook? It's just what I expected. For this reason, when you first proposed your plan of changing over our occupations, I was really against it, but you seemed to wish it so much that I gave in and allowed you to do as you wished. The mistake of our trying unfamiliar tasks is soon seen, and you have done poorly. I will not return you your bow and arrows until you have found my hook. Look to it that you find it and return it quickly." The happy hunter felt that he was to blame for all that had come to pass, and bore his brother's scornful scolding with humility and patience. He hunted everywhere for the hook most diligently, but it was nowhere to be found. He was, at last, obliged to give up all hope of finding it. He then went home, and in desperation broke his beloved sword into pieces, and made 500 hooks from the metal. He took these to his angry brother, and offered them to him, begging for forgiveness, and begging him to accept them in place of the one that he had lost for him. But this was all useless. His brother would not listen to him, much less grant his request. The happy hunter then made another 500 hooks, and fine ones at that, and again took them to his brother, beseeching him to forgive him and pardon. "Though you make 1,000,000 hooks," said the skillful fisher, shaking his head, "they are of no use to me. I cannot forgive you unless you bring me back my own original hook." Nothing would appease the anger of the skillful fisher, for he had a terrible disposition, and had always hated his brother because of his virtues, and now, with the excuse of the lost fishing hook, he planned to kill him, and to usurp his place as the ruler of Japan. The happy hunter knew all this full well, but he could say nothing, for being the younger, he owed his elder brother obedience, and so he returned to the seashore and once more began to look for the missing hook. He was much cast down, for he had lost all hope of ever finding his brother's hook now. While he stood on the beach, lost in the perplexity and wondering what he had best do next, an old man suddenly appeared, carrying a stick in his hand. The happy hunter afterwards remembered that he did not see from whence the old man came, neither did he know how he was there. He happened to look up and saw the old man coming towards him. "You are Ho-Ho-Demi, sometimes called the happy hunter, are you not?" asked the old man. "What are you doing alone in such a place?" "Yes, I am he," answered the unhappy young man. "Unfortunately, while fishing, I lost my brother's precious fishing hook. I have hunted all over this shore, but alas, I cannot find it, and I am very troubled. For my brother, you see, he won't forgive me till I restore it to him. But anyway, who are you?" "My name is Shiwozuchi no Okina, and I live nearby on the shore. I'm very sorry to hear the misfortune that has befallen you. Indeed, you must be very anxious. But if I tell you what I think, the hook is nowhere near here. It is either at the bottom of the sea, or in the body of some fish that has swallowed it. And for that reason, though you spend your whole life looking for it here, you will never find it." The man looked distressed. "Then what can I do?" "You had better go down to Ringu and tell Rinjin, the dragon king of the sea, what your trouble is, and ask him to find the hook for you. I think that's probably the best way. Perhaps the only way." "Your idea is a splendid one," said the happy hunter. "But I fear I cannot get to the Sea King's realm, for I've always heard that it's situated at the bottom of the sea, and I surely can't swim down that far." "Oh, don't worry. "There will be no difficulty getting you down there," said the old man. "I can soon make something for you to ride on through the sea." "Thank you very much," said the happy hunter. "Oh, I shall be very grateful to you if you will be so kind." And thus the old man set at once to work, and soon made a basket and offered it to the happy hunter. He received it with great joy, and taking to the water, mounted it, and prepared to start off. He bid good-bye to the kind old man who had helped him so much, and told him that he would certainly reward him as soon as he found his hook, and could return to Japan without fear of his brother's anger. The old man pointed out the direction he must take, and told him how to reach the realm of Ringu, and watched him ride out to sea on the basket, which resembled a small boat. The happy hunter made all the haste he could, riding on the basket which had been given to him by his new friend. His queer boat seemed to go through the water of its own accord, and the distance was much shorter than he had expected, for in a few hours he caught sight of the gate and the roof of the Sea King's palace. And what a large palace it was, with its numberless sloping roofs and gables, huge gateways, and its great stone walls. He soon landed, and leaving his basket on the beach, he walked up to the large gateway. The pillars of the gate were made of beautiful red coral, and the gate itself was adorned with the glittering gems of all kinds. Large katsura trees overshadowed it. Our hero had often heard of the wonders of the Sea King's palace beneath the sea, but all the stories he had ever heard fell short of the reality which he now saw for the first time with his own eyes. The happy hunter would have liked to enter the gate there and then, but he saw that it was fast closed, and also that there was no one about with whom he could ask to open it for him. So he stopped to think what he should do. In the shade of the trees before the gate, he noticed a well full of fresh spring water. Surely someone would have come out to draw water from the well after some time, he thought. And then he climbed into the tree overhanging the well, and seated himself to rest on one of the branches, waiting for what might happen next. Before long he saw a huge gate swing wide open, and out came two beautiful women. Now, the Mikoto had always heard that Ringu was the realm of the Dragon King under the sea, and had naturally supposed that the palace was inhabited by dragons and similar terrible creatures, so that when he saw these two lovely princesses, whose beauty would be rare even in the world from which he had just come, he was exceedingly surprised, and wondered what could it all mean. But he said not a word, silently gazing at them through the foliage of the trees, waiting to see what they would do. He saw in their hands they carried golden buckets. Slowly and gracefully in their trailing garments they approached the well, standing in the shade of the katsura trees, and were about to draw water, all unknowing of the stranger who was watching them, for the happy hunter was quite hidden among the branches of the tree where he had posted himself. As the two ladies leaned over the side of the well to let down their golden buckets, which they did every day in the year, they saw reflected in the deep still water the face of a handsome youth gazing up at them from amidst the branches of the tree in whose shade they stood. Never before had they seen the face of a mortal man, and they were frightened, and drew back quickly with their golden buckets in their hands. Their curiosity, however, soon gave them courage, and they glanced timidly upwards to see the cause of the unusual reflection. And then they beheld the happy hunter sitting in the tree, looking down at them with surprise and admiration. They gazed at him, face to face, but their tongues were still with wonder, and could not find a word to say to him. When the hunter saw that he was discovered, he sprang down lightly from the tree, and he said to the maidens, "I am a traveller, and as I was very thirsty, I came to the well in hopes of quenching my thirst, but I could find no bucket from which to draw the water. So I climbed into the tree, much vexed, and, well, I waited for someone to come. Just at that moment, while I was thirstily, impatiently waiting, you noble ladies appeared, as if in answer to my great need. Therefore I pray you of your mercy, give me some water to drink, for I am a thirsty traveller, and I am in a strange land that I don't recognize." His dignity and graciousness overruled their timidity, and bowing in silence, they both once more approached the well, and letting down their golden buckets, drew up some water and poured it into a jeweled cup, offering it to the stranger. He received it from them with both hands, raising it to the height of his forehead in token of high respect and pleasure, and then drank the water quickly, for his thirst was so great. When he had finished his long draught, he set the cup down on the edge of the well, and drawing his short sword, he cut off one of the strange curved jewels, magatama, a necklace of which hung round his neck and fell over his chest. He placed the jewel in the cup, and returned it to them. "This is a token of my thanks," he said, and he bowed deeply. The two ladies took the cup, and looking into it to see what he had put inside, for they did not know yet what it was, they gave a start of surprise, for there lay a beautiful gem at the bottom of the cup, likes that they had never seen. No ordinary mortal would give away a jewel so freely. "Will you not honor us by telling us who you are?" said the elder damsel. "Certainly," said the happy hunter. "I am Hohodemi, the fourth Mikoto, also called in Japan the Happy Hunter." "Are you indeed Hohodemi, the grandson of Amaterasu, the sun goddess?" asked the damsel who had spoken first. "I am the eldest daughter of Rinjin, the king of the sea, and my name is Princess Tayotama." "And," said the younger maiden, who at last found her tongue, "I am her sister, Princess Tamayori." "Are you indeed the daughters of Rinjin, the king of the sea?" the hunter said. "I cannot tell you how glad I am to meet you." And without waiting for them to reply, he went on. "The other day I was fishing with my brother's hook, and dropped it. How? I'm sure I can't tell. As my brother prizes his fishing hook above all other possessions, this is the greatest calamity that could have ever befallen me. Unless I find it again, I have never hoped to win my brother's forgiveness, for he is angry at what I have done, and I don't blame him. I have searched for it many, many times and many times again, but I can't find it anywhere. Therefore I am much troubled. While I was hunting for the hook, and in great distress, I met a wise old man, and he told me that the best thing I could do was to come to Ringu and to Rinjin, the Dragon King of the Sea, and ask him to help me. Oh, and this kind old man also showed me how to come here. Now, you know how it is, why I am here. I want to ask Rinjin if he knows where the lost hook is. Will you be so kind as to take me to your father? And, well, do you think that he will even see me? The happy hunter asked anxiously. Now Princess Toyotama, she listened to his long story, and after thinking for a while, she replied, Well, not only do I think it will be easy for you to see my father, but I think he will also be much pleased to meet you. I am sure he will say that good fortune has befallen him, that so great and noble a man as you, the grandson of Amaterasu, should come down to the bottom of the sea. And then turning to her younger sister, she said, Do you not think so, Tamayori? Oh, yes, indeed, answered Princess Tamayori in a sweet voice. As you say, we can now know no greater honor than to welcome the Mikoto to our home. Oh, indeed, what an honor it is. And the happy hunter smiled and told them, Then I ask you to please be so kind to lead the way. Condescend to enter, Mikoto, said both the sisters, and bowing low, they led him through the gate. The younger princess left her sister to take charge of the happy hunter, and going faster than they, she reached the Sea King's palace first, and running to her father's room, she told him of all that had happened to them at the gate, and that her sister was even now bringing Augustness, this Mikoto, to him. The Dragon King of the Sea was much surprised at the news, for this was very rare, perhaps only once in several hundred years, that the palace of the Sea King was visited by mortals of any capacity, let alone royalty. Rinjin at once clapped his hands and summoned all of his courtiers and the servants of the palace, and the chief fish of the sea, all together, and solemnly told them that the grandson of the sun goddess Amaterasu was coming to the palace, and that they must be very ceremonious and polite in serving the new royal visitor. He then ordered them all to the entrance of the palace to welcome the happy hunter. Rinjin then dressed himself in his ceremonial robes, going out to welcome him. In a few moments, the Princess Toyotama and the happy hunter reached the entrance, and the Sea King and his wife bowed to the ground and thanked him for the honor he did them in coming to see them. The Sea King then led the happy hunter to the guest room, and placing him in the uppermost seat, he bowed respectfully before him and said, I am Rinjin, the Dragon King of the Sea, and this is my wife. Condescend to remember us forever. Are you indeed Rinjin, the King of the Sea, of whom I have often heard so much of? Answered the happy hunter, saluting his host most ceremoniously and gracefully. King, I must apologize for all the trouble I am giving you by my unexpected visit. And then he bowed again and thanked the Sea King. You need not thank me, said Rinjin. It is I who must thank you for coming, although the Sea Palace is a poor place, as you see. I shall be highly honored if you will make us a long visit. There was much gladness between the Sea King and the Happy Hunter, and they sat and talked for a long time. At last, the Sea King clapped his hands, and then a huge retinue of fish appeared, all robed in ceremonial garment, and bearing in their fins various trays, on which all kinds of undersea delicacies were served. The great feast was now spread before the king and his royal guest. All the fishes in waiting were chosen from amongst the finest in the sea. So you can imagine what a wonderful array of sea creatures it was that waited upon the Happy Hunter that day. All in the palace tried to do their best to please him, and to show him that he was a much honored guest. During the long repast, which lasted for hours, Rin Jin commanded his daughters to play some music, and the two princesses came in and performed on the koto, a Japanese harp, and sang and danced in turns. The time passed so pleasantly that the Happy Hunter seemed to forget his trouble, and why he had came to the Sea King's realm, and he gave himself up to the enjoyment of this wonderful place, the land of the fairy fish. Who has ever heard of a place so marvelous? But the Mikoto soon remembered what had brought him to Ringu, and he said to his host, "Perhaps your daughters have told you, King Rinjin, that I have come here to try and recover my brother's fishing hook which I lost while fishing the other day. May I ask you to be so kind as to inquire of all of your subjects if any of them has seen a fishing hook lost in the sea?" "Certainly," said the obliging Sea King. "I will immediately summon them all here and ask them." As soon as he had issued the command, the octopus, the cuttlefish, the bonito, the oxtail fish, eel, jellyfish, shrimp, and many other fishes of all kinds came in and sat down before Rin Jin, their king, and arranged themselves and their fins in order. And then the Sea King said solemnly to them, "Our visitor, who is sitting before you all, is the Mikoto grandson of Amaterasu. His name is Hohodemi, the fourth Mikoto, and he is also called the Happy Hunter of the Mountains, for he was fishing the other day upon the shore of Japan. Someone robbed him of his brother's fishing hook. He has come all the way down to the bottom of the sea to our kingdom, because he thought that one of you fishers may have taken the hook from him in mischievous play. If any of you have done so, you must return it immediately by order of the king, or if any of you know who the thief is, you must at once tell us the name and where they are." All the fish were taken by surprise when they heard these words, and could say nothing for some time. They sat looking at each other and at the Dragon King. At last the cuttlefish came forward and said, "My king, I think that Tai, the red bream, must be the thief who has stolen the hook." The king raised an eyebrow. "Where is your proof?" he asked. And the cuttlefish replied, "Since yesterday evening the Tai has not been able to eat anything. Actually, he seems to be suffering from a bad throat, and for this reason I think that the hook may actually be in his throat. I think we had better send for him at once." All the fish agreed to this and said, "Yes, it's certainly strange that the Tai is the only fish who has not obeyed your summons. Will you send for him and inquire into the matter? Then our innocence will certainly be proved." "Yes," said the Sea King. It is indeed strange that the Tai has not come, for he ought to be the first to be here. Send for him at once." Without waiting for the king's order, the cuttlefish had already started for the Tai's dwelling, and he now returned, bringing the Tai with him. He led him before the king. The Tai sat there looking frightened and ill, and he was certainly in pain, for his usually red face was pale, and his eyes were nearly closed, and looked about half their usual size. "Answer, O Tai," cried the Sea King. "Why did you not come in answer to my summons today?" "I have been ill since yesterday," answered the Tai. "That is why I could not come." "Do not say another word," cried Rin angrily. "Your illness is the punishment of the gods for stealing Mikoto's hook." "It is only too true," said the Tai. "The hook is still in my throat, and all my efforts to get it out have been useless. I can't eat, and I can scarcely breathe, and each moment I feel that it will choke me. Sometimes it gives me great pain. I had no intention of stealing the Mikoto's hook, really. I heedlessly snapped at the bait which I saw in the water. I was hungry. The hook came off and it stuck in my throat. Please forgive me." The cuttlefish now came forward and said to the king, "What I said was right. You see, the hook still sticks in the Tai's throat. I hope to be able to pull it out in the presence of the Mikoto, and then we can return it to him safely." "Oh, please, make haste and pull it out, I beg you," cried the Tai, pitifully, for he felt the pains in his throat coming on again. "I want to return the hook back to the hunter." "All right, Tai," said his friend the cuttlefish, and then opening the Tai's mouth as wide as he could, and putting on one of his feelers down the Tai's throat, he quickly and easily drew the hook out of the sufferer's large mouth. He then washed it and brought it to the king. Rin took the hook from his subject, and then respectfully returned it to the happy hunter, who was overjoyed at getting it back. He thanked Rin many times, his face beaming with gratitude, and said that he owed the happy ending of his quest to the Sea King's wise authority and kindness. But Rin now desired to punish the Tai. But the happy hunter begged him not to do so. Since his lost hook was thus happily recovered, he did not wish to make more trouble for the poor little Tai, who had already suffered enough already. It was indeed the Tai who had taken the hook, yes, but he had already been punished for that fault, if fault it could be called. What he had done was done in heedlessness, and certainly not by intention. The happy hunter said that in fact he blamed himself. If he had understood how to fish properly, he would have never lost the hook, and therefore all his trouble had been caused in the first place by his trying to do something which he did not know how to do. And so with that reasoning, he begged the Sea King to forgive his subject. And who could resist the pleading of so wise and compassionate a judge? Rin forgave the subject at once, at the request of his Mikoto guest. The Tai was so glad that he shook his fins for joy, and he and all the other fish went out from the presence of their king, praising the virtues of the wise hunter. Now that the hook was found, the hunter had nothing to keep him in Ringu, and he was anxious to get back to his own kingdom and to make peace with his angry brother, the Skillful Fisher. But the Sea King, who had learned to love him and would fain to have kept him as a son, begged him not to go so soon, but to make the Sea Palace his home as long as he ever liked. While the happy hunter was hesitating, the two lovely princesses, Tayotama and Tamayori, came, and with the sweetest of bows and voices, joined their father in pressing him to stay, so that without seeming ungracious, he could not say them nay, and was obliged to stay for at least some time. Between the sea realm and the earth, there was no difference in the night of time, and the happy hunter found that 3 years went fleeting quickly in this delightful land. The years pass swiftly when anyone is truly happy. But though the wonders of that enchanted land seemed to be new every day, and though the Sea King's kindness seemed rather to increase than to grow less with time, the happy hunter grew more and more homesick as the days passed, and he could not repress a great anxiety to know what had happened to his home and country and his brother while he was away. And so at last he went to the Sea King and said, "My stay with you has been most happy, and I'm very grateful to you for all your kindness to me. But I govern Japan, and delightful as this place is, I cannot absence myself forever from my country. I must also return the fishing hook to my brother and ask his forgiveness for having deprived him of it for so long. I am indeed very sorry to part from you, but this time it really can't be helped. With your gracious permission, I will take my leave today. I hope to make you another visit some day. Please give up the idea of my staying any longer." King Rinjin was overcome with sorrow at the thought that he must lose his friend who made a great diversion in the Palace of the Sea, and his tears fell fast as he answered, "We are indeed very sorry to part with you, Mikoto, for we have enjoyed your stay with us very much. You have become a noble and honored guest, and we have heartily made you welcome, but I quite understand that as you govern Japan you ought to be there and not here, and that it is vain for us to try and keep you longer with us, as much as we would like to have you stay. But I hope you won't forget us. Strange circumstances, to say the least, have brought us together, and I trust the friendship thus begun between the land and the sea will last and grow stronger than it had ever been before." When the Sea King had finished speaking, he turned to his 2 daughters and bade them bring the 2 tide jewels of the sea. The 2 princesses bowed low, rose and glided out of the hall. In a few minutes they returned, each one carrying in their hands a flashing gem which the room filled with light. As the happy hunter looked at them, he wondered what they could be, and the Sea King took them from his daughters and said, "These 2 valuable talismans we have inherited from our ancestors from time immemorial. We now give them to you, as a parting gift, in token of our great affection to you. These 2 gems are called the Nanjiao and the Kanjiao." The happy hunter bowed low to the ground. "I can never thank you enough for all your kindness, King. And now, will you add one more favor to the rest, and tell me what these jewels are, and what am I to do with them?" "The Nanjo," answered the Sea King, "is also called the Jewel of the Flood Tide, and whoever holds it in his possession can command the sea to roll in and flood the land at any time he wills. The Kanjo is also called the Jewel of Ebbing Tide, and this gem controls the sea and the waves thereof, and will cause even a tidal wave to recede." Then Rin Jin showed his friend how to use the talismans one by one and handed them to him. The happy hunter was very glad to have these two wonderful gems, the Jewel of the Flood Tide and the Jewel of the Ebbing Tide, for he felt that they would preserve him in case of danger from enemies at any time. After thanking his kind host again and again, he prepared to depart. The Sea King and the two princesses, Tayotama and Tamayori, and all the inmates of the palace, came out to say farewell. And before the sound of the last goodbye had died away, the happy hunter had passed out from under the gateway, past the well of happy memory, standing in the shade of the great katsura trees on his way to the beach. Here he found, instead of the strange basket on which he had come to the realm of Ringu, a large crocodile waiting for him, and he had never seen such a huge creature. It measured 8 fathoms in length, from the tip of its tail and the end of its long mouth. The Sea King had ordered the monster to carry the hunter back to Japan. Just like the wonderful basket which Shiwazuchi no Okina had made, it could travel faster than any boat, and in this strange way, riding on the back of a crocodile, the happy hunter finally returned to his own land. As soon as the crocodile landed him, the hunter hastened to tell the Skillful Fisher of his safe return. He then gave him back the fishing hook, which had been found in the mouth of the Tai, and which had been the cause of so much trouble between them. And with that he earnestly begged his brother's forgiveness, telling him all that had happened to him in the Sea King's palace, and what wonderful adventures had led to the finding of the hook. Now, the Skillful Fisher had used the lost hook as an excuse for driving his brother out of the country, and when his brother had left him that day 3 years ago and had not returned, he had been very glad in his evil heart, and had at once usurped his brother's place as ruler of the land. He was now powerful and rich. Now, in the midst of enjoying what did not belong to him, and hoping that his brother might never return to claim his rights, quite unexpectedly, there he stood, the happy hunter, the unwelcome returned brother, right there before him. The Skillful Fisher feigned forgiveness, for he could make no more excuses for sending his brother away again, but in his heart he was very angry and hated his brother more and more, till at last he could no longer bear the sight of him, day after day, planning and watching for an opportunity to kill him. One day, when the happy hunter was walking in the rice fields, his brother followed him with a dagger. But the happy hunter knew that his brother was following him to kill him, and he felt that now, in this hour of great danger, was the time to use the jewels of the flow and ebb of the tide, to prove whether the Sea King had told him was true or not. So he took out the jewel of the flood tide from the bosom of his dress and raised it to his forehead. Instantly, over the fields and over the farms the sea came rolling in wave upon wave, till it reached the very spot where his brother was standing. The fisher stood amazed and terrified. In another minute he was struggling in the water and calling upon his brother to save him from drowning. The happy hunter, of course, had a kind heart, and he couldn't bear to see the sight of his brother's distress. At once he put back the jewel of the flood tide and took out the jewel of the ebb tide. No sooner did he hold it up as high as his forehead that the sea ran back, and ere the long tossing, rolling floods had vanished, and the farms and fields and dry land appeared as before. The skillful fisher was very frightened at the peril of death in which he had stood, and was greatly impressed by the wondering things that he's seen his brother could do. He learned now that he was making a fatal mistake to set himself against his brother, younger than he thought he was, for he now had become so powerful that the sea would flow in and the tide ebb at a word of his command. And so he humbled himself before the happy hunter and asked him to forgive him all the wrong he had done to him. The skillful fisher promised to restore his brother to his rights, and swore that though the happy hunter was the younger brother and owed him allegiance by right of birth, that he, the skillful fisher, would exalt him as superior and bow before him as lord of all Japan. And then the happy hunter said that he would forgive his brother if he would throw into the receding tide all his evil ways. The fisher promised, and there was peace between the two brothers. From this time he kept his word, and he became a kind brother, and eventually a good man. And the happy hunter, well, he now ruled his kingdom without being disturbed by family strife, and in Japan there was peace for a long, long time. Above all the treasures in his house, he prized the wonderful jewels of the flow and ebb of the tide which had been given to him by Rinjin, the dragon king of the sea.